This is Nicolaas Alexiou, Department of Sociology and Founding Director of the Hellenic American Project, and today in our series of oral history interviews we are very honored, pleased and happy to have with us an exceptional person, a member and a pillar of the Greek American community, and the General International Friends of Nikos Kazantzakis Society. I want to welcome Mr. Manolis Velivasakis today, Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. Αγαπητέ κύριε Βελιβασάκη, αγαπητέ Μανώλη, dear Mr. Velivasakis, dear friend Manoli, welcome to Hellenic American Project and to Queen's College, City University of New York. And I'm very additionally pleased because you are a CUNY graduate at some point. So tell us your name and where you were born.
Nico, thank you for the invitation. Ευχαριστώ πολύ. Χαίρομαι ιδιαίτερα που βρεθήκαμε σήμερα για την κουβέντα μας εδώ. As you mentioned, my name is Manolis Velivasakis. I am a structural engineer, but I wear too many hats.
You were
too
also
many things, and because of that, I've lost all my hair.
You also serve as the president of the Pancretian Association.
Pancretian Association.
Your place of birth?
I was born in Crete, in Heraklion, Crete, up at the Psiloritis mountain, and I finished my elementary school at my chorio, my village.
Which was?
Kamariotis Malevizou, up near Arnoia, if you've heard the big town.
Of course, I've been there many times.
Okay. In fact, my grandfather was from Arnoia. So I have a connection there. At 12 years old, I had to go to Heraklion because that's where the high school was. And that's where I spent my teenage years, 6 years of my life, going to high school, Lykio. And after that...
you decided to pursue your academic career and you thought of
Well,
America.
I had plans to come to the United States. We had relatives here that lived for many years, and they wanted me to come to the United States. In fact, while in high school, I had inquired about schools here, and I was accepted by several schools. But unfortunately, the junta got to me before, so they would not issue a passport because I was of that age to
go to the army, to serve the army.
To serve the army. So. I served the army. I had to serve the army, the Greek army, which was fine. I never regretted that.
For 2 years?
For 2 years.
Because it was a draft, mandatory.
It was mandatory. It was
still is, I guess,
yes.
Right?
And right after I finished the army in 1970, I came to the United States, to New York, and
to reunite with your parents
to reunite with my parents, my family that was here for 2 years already. And immediately after that, I entered CCNY.
For engineering?
For civil engineering. Spent 5 years for the undergraduate program.
Which is unusual.
The engineering program at CCNY was 5 years.
All programs are 4 years.
They cut it now to 4 years, and in fact, I was on the advisory board for a few years ago, and they had decided then to cut it to 4 years, and I said, well, 4 years is really not enough, but it was driven by economics, really.
At the time you came, the majority of the Greeks, they were still living in Manhattan or in other places. Astoria was in the beginning, in the making, in the 60s and 70s. So where do you live?
Well, we lived in the Bronx, in the Northeast Bronx.
A strong Greek American community.
Very strong Greek American community by the Zodochos Pigi in Pelham Bay. Very nice community. Even today is a very nice community. and commuted from the Bronx via subway to CCNY on a daily basis. Yes, the Astoria was not really, it was the very beginning. The Greek community was concentrated in Manhattan, 40th Street and 8th Avenue. And that's where the big events we used to go for the Cretan Club and the events there, the annual events and so on. The Greek movies.
Omonia existed at that time, right? The
Σύλλογος Κρατών Omonia, of course.
Association
Their club was on 30th Street, I believe, and 8th Avenue. And I had enrolled into the youth club at the time, Lavris. And it was about the time that a lot of population movement was going on, and the Greeks were moving to Astoria. And I remember we were going to Astoria as a youth, and we had suggested to the club that we wanted to open up a youth office in Astoria, and of course we were outed out of the club right away. But anyway, it ended up a few years later, even the adult club came to Astoria. So it was an irresistible movement. They just could not. They lost all the membership from Manhattan because they had moved to Astoria. But it was interesting times. I mean...
and how was life for you coming from Irakli at a very young age? Of course, you served the army. You were more mature as a youth, probably. But how describe some of the impressions you have about America in New York when you first came. You were, of course, a student at that time, but also you had a connection to the Greek American community and to the Cretan Association. You were thinking to stay here for a long time, to return?
Not necessarily. I mean,
you liked it?
You know, every immigrant has a dream, and the dream is I go to achieve something, and then I'm going to return back home. And that was, in my case, I said, I'm going to go to the United States, get my degree, and I'm going to come back home and open up an engineering office and do some business in Crete. Well, those are dreams, don't necessarily materialize. Opportunities come and go, greater opportunities appear, and that's what I did. I got my degree, then I said, well, you know, the bachelor's degree is really not enough to practice. You need much deeper knowledge. I went for a master's degree, and after the master's degree, I enrolled into the PhD program, and that was all at night, because I was working during the day.
Doing what?
Engineering.
Engineering. But as a student, you did
as a student,
other jobs?
No. As a student, no. As a student, I was working as whatever I could find. Restaurants, whatever work I could find.
Within the Greek American community or the American community?
Yes and no. Yes and no. Mostly outside. I found that outside the Greek community you could make more money. So I chose that.
Okay. And the fact that you were a Greek, how the Americans received you? You felt that you were discriminated, or you felt some support, or it didn't really matter?
I never felt that way. I always felt that the Americans valued the loyalty that you had, the desire to put in the days of hard work, and that's what they valued more as to who you were and what you produced than where you came from.
I see.
And to me, that was always valuable, and I found that even in my professional career. And I dealt with many different people around the world, and sometimes when I felt that being Greek was advantageous to me, I took advantage of it.
Okay.
Sometimes, no. Sometimes being an American was more valuable. And that's what I said. I'm an American. Never mind that I'm a Greek American. That was the best combination that I could come up with.
Very compatible to be a Greek American, and American is very compatible, right?
Well, listen, I worked in the Middle East, for example. I worked in Turkey. I had an office in Istanbul. And by first look, everybody knew I was Greek.
Okay.
But they also knew that I was American and that I had an American education and I spoke English. And they valued that.
The knowledge that
the
you
knowledge
have
that I
experienced.
brought, the experience. But they also, I felt that they also appreciated the fact that I could understand and knew how to deal with them. Because the Americans...
Because of your Greek background.
That's right. Because the Americans came many times as very arrogant. I know the best and I'm not going to negotiate. Or, and I knew how the Middle Eastern mind works. And that was very helpful. Yeah.
So let's talk about the community, your relationship with the community. Because you were a student in a very diverse environment, you had friends who weren't necessarily only Greeks, right? You had also American friends at the university.
Mostly.
And outside the university also.
Mostly. I mean, the engineering program, when I attended, I think we had a couple of Greeks or 3 Greeks. 3 Greeks in civil engineering. 3 or 4. I should note that the number 1 and number 2 in the civil engineering department, there were Greeks. One of them, it was me, and another good friend of mine, Hermes Galatis. We entered together and we competed for first and second place every semester until the 5th year. So
the 5 years plus that you were studying, you had a chance to visit Greece?
No, unfortunately not. If you remember, those were difficult years, I mean, economically. We were no capacity. I mean, summertime for me was an opportunity to work hard and make some money. So I could live the rest of the year without having to work as hard. And that's what I did. I think the first time I went back to Greece was 6 years after my original.
But you had the desire to return, you had the desire to get the news from Greece, the situation. How you received the news? Because it was the 70s was a time before the tremendous technological revolution
you
that
did
you
not
have.
receive news then. You had to go to 8th Avenue to buy a newspaper and read it. And it was probably weeks old before you bought it. But
there was no TV.
No Greek TV. No.
It was a cinema in Manhattan, right?
There was a movie in Manhattan that played all the crazy little movies with mostly love movies.
So it was difficult.
It was difficult and maybe not, because it sort of forced you to take a deep dive in the new society that you lived in.
Okay.
And not pay attention to exterior factors. And I thought that was a very necessary evil, especially for an engineering program, which was a very, very rigorous program. There was no such thing as delaying an exam or a class.
But at home, you had a Greek environment, speaking Greek inside the home.
Of course, my parents were Greek.
Music, food. Cretan.
Sunday, we used to go to church. We used to go to the Silo, the club, and when they had big events. As a youth, the youth club, we used to get together every weekend and party. So that was the Greek part, that was the Greek side. Yes.
No, it is interesting because since the 70s that you are here and you have a strong mix with non-Greeks in a very multicultural environment, you kept the language and parts of your identity is very strongly Greek, right? How you manage that?
It is, and you manage that by intention. You, first of all, I have to say that I practice Greek at home, but that's not the only way that you practice Greek. I read quite a bit. Whatever I could find in my hands, like books or whatever it was, newspapers, and that's how I kept with the language. And I probably can say that I speak better Greek now than when I first came to the United States, where I was fresh from Greece, because the language evolves. Mm-hmm. And I understood that, and I wanted to keep up with the language. I didn't want to speak a language of the 1970s. And the only way to do that is to keep up and read, and because you're a sociologist, you know how languages change. Mm-hmm. And that's how I kept it.
Yeah.
And also by being involved with the Greeks and being mm-hmm. constantly forced to speak the language in the events that we organize.
But even now, we have situations where Greeks or Greek Americans are involved, but they don't speak the language. And I know that one of the most agonizing issues that exist within the Greek American community, and not only the Greek American, all ethnic groups, is the fear of assimilation, to keep the language. In the 70s, we had less schools to teach the language, less, let's say, centers at universities. And now you have the second generation and more that they don't speak the language anymore, although they go to Greek schools.
Well,
how do you see that?
It is kind of unfair to compare, for example, me and an American-born young man. I grew up in a Greek environment. Greek is my mother tongue, mm-hmm. which is totally different than my son, for example, here, my sons.
But you lived more years outside of Greece than in Greece,
correct.
Right?
But deep, you have the knowledge, okay. And if you want to, sure, a lot of people come and they sort of forget the language. I know all about the Greeking, the mm-hmm. Greeklish. Mm-hmm. I speak half Greek and half mm-hmm. English. I intentionally try to avoid that. You either speak English or you speak Greek. Mm-hmm. And once you master that, then you can do it.
So for you to speak and read and write the Greek language is part of your identity?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I take pride that I can still write in Greek as well as someone who lives in Greece today.
Very interesting.
And it's difficult mm-hmm. because, as you said, mm-hmm. the language evolves. And sometimes I don't have, mm-hmm. you have to catch up constantly.
Yes.
Constantly.
Yeah, it's a living organism.
That's right.
Yes.
But and it's a constant struggle. Mm-hmm. And you do that only by reading and by exercising mm-hmm. and by constantly. I know that because mm-hmm. I wrote a few articles in my book that's
we'll go there, and I would like us to read the
and I had the editor read it, and she made some corrections, and she says, Mr. V, some of the words that you used are kind of dated. I said, oh, you got that, okay. I said, I guess I have not achieved what I wanted. He says, no, it's okay. You get 95%.
Very, very interesting. Tell us some of the various events that you organize, you are part of, or Syllogos, or the club, as the Cretan Association created in Manhattan, or when they moved here. What kind of events are usually?
Well, I mean,
historical.
The Cretans, mm-hmm. and the Greeks generally, mm-hmm. they honor their local mm-hmm. Celebrations, mm-hmm. their local saints, mm-hmm. their local yortes, their mm-hmm. local things and that.
And national
and the
events.
national, of course. Yeah. So, being in the Cretan Club, we always organized events, annual events about the Arkadi, mm-hmm.
Το ολοκαύτωμα,
Ολοκαύτωμα, Αρκαδίου, 25th of March, the October 28th, events about our history, events about Venizelos, events about Kazantzakis.
The Battle of Crete, which is a historical event.
I always felt that our community here in the United States, the Greek community, lacked the cultural exposure. There were not enough cultural events. And unless someone takes it to heart to organize such events and explain to them and teach them, how would they learn? How would they know? How would they learn? So, organizing an event about the Holocaust of Arkadi, the monastery, to me it was a ritual that had to be repeated every year. And every year I would go up and explain to the adults, but mostly to the younger generation, what happened, and when it happened, what happened, why it happened. And in running the risk of repeating yourself, you have to do that, otherwise it just doesn't sink. And I mean, isn't that true with all of the organizations? Why do we celebrate the 25th of March? Because people have to know what happened that day. People have to know that we had a problem with the Turks and we were under the occupation for 400 years. And if you don't teach our young kids that, they're not going to learn it at the American high school, right?
Yeah. So the important, you see some value, for the formulation and the structure of sylogi, of club associations, of ethnic associations. Recently, except probably the Cretans and one or two other associations, those ethnic associations, they're diminishing.
Unfortunately, I see that. I see that with the Cretans too. And you should know that better than I do. I'm just a structural engineer. You're a sociologist. I see our society changing. And there's nothing you can do to prevent that change. You only need to reinforce certain core values, and hopefully they will stick. But our clubs and our associations used to be run until very recently by first generation
immigrants, yes.
Immigrants, like myself. That we had already the core values embedded in our hearts and souls. Now, there's a change. The new generation is coming in. The new generation of the Cretan Club, they're going to organize Hawaiian nights. They're going to organize bouzouki nights. They're not going to organize a historical talk. So and that's a natural change.
They have other interests, yes.
They have other interests.
As you say, the census for a long time, after the 2000 census, American census, the American-born generations with Greek descent are numerically more than the immigrant generation. So,
but at the same time,
we have to change. This is what you're trying to bring to our attention. We have to change how we structure. What are the new policies for the needs of the new generation?
Correct. And I keep saying, and I keep preaching to our Pancretan Association. Our Pancretan Association, when I was president, it had 85 chapters.
All over the states?
All over the states, 85 chapters. Very thriving chapters. Some of them managed to go through the change. Some of them are still today sticking to the immigrant line of thought.
They're doomed to fail.
They're doomed to fail. We see it every day. But, and I keep telling them, I said, you don't change, you're just like the dinosaurs. They couldn't change, something happened to them. And I'm very happy that my own chapter here in New York, Silovos Minos, is changing. Is the second and third generation.
Minos,
and I may not like what they do, but
yeah.
nevertheless, they keep the core values. That's what interests me.
Minos is a later or a newest association of Cretans. Omonia was first in early 1900s, around there.
1929.
1929.
And Minos came back in 1978.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose...
And it was in Astoria.
In Astoria from the beginning, correct. And I chose to join Minos because it was a smaller association. And I had a lot of friends that were there. I mean, you go to these clubs because you have friends.
Of course, yes.
I mean, they're not only cultural clubs. They are more than cultural clubs. They are civic clubs, basically.
And like Omonia, they have their own building?
They had their own building. They bought a little building. They bought a second building. I was president when I bought the second building. There came a time where we were so many people that we couldn't fit. So I said, let's just knock both of them and build a new building. And that's what we did.
Well, you are an engineer after all.
So they asked me if I could renovate and connect the two buildings. And I said, sure, of course I can do that. But then at the end I said to myself, if we don't knock them down today, they'll never get knocked down. And one day the buildings were no more. And we built a brand new building, and it serves the community. It serves the needs of the chapter. It serves, and not only the chapter. I mean, I see Minos as a destination of many
yes.
Other organizations.
Yes.
And I take pride in that. I take pride that that is a place where I had something to do.
It's a social hub. People go. You don't have to be Cretan to go there.
Not at all. Yeah.
Excellent. You mentioned earlier before the interview that a typical old-fashioned event in Manhattan used to attract a lot of people. You had an event in one of the famous hotels in Manhattan?
I remember, Nico, I remember the annual dance of Ammonia in Manhattan. It used to attract over 1,000 people.
All well dressed and...
All dressed in their best dresses, and the ladies with their furs, and the men with their hats, and I was a youngster then, but and being from Greece, that I wasn't used to this formality, so to speak. I said, wow, this is such a great place. Well, these were the times. Times changed. Now we are a little less formal, but equally strong-minded Cretans.
You work as a structural engineer for many years, but also you were a teacher, right? You taught.
I did.
Which university?
I was under the belief that unless one teaches, he or she can never maintain the level of knowledge that you acquired when you were in college. And I always took advantage of that, because when you go in front of a class of graduate students, I was mainly teaching graduate students, graduate architects, in front of a class of 30 young, very smart people, you have to be on your 2 feet and be very quick. And your brain has to act very quickly. And I liked it. Nico, I used to work 8 hours a day at the office, and the office was not a simple office. It was very difficult type of work. And I used to go at night to Brooklyn, either to Pratt or to New York IT, and teach for 3 hours. And I would get rejuvenated. And after 3 hours, I would sit in my car and be totally exhausted. But that to me was worth it. And I wasn't really getting, I mean, it's not the money. I said to him, I said,
that I know very well. That is not.
I said,
It's never the money.
if I would spend my time practicing what I do at the office, I would make 10 times more money than what I make here.
Yes, yes.
It's not the money, it's the satisfaction. And I kept that until the day I retired. 39 years.
Wow.
And,
whole life.
And I never regretted it. I never.
You ever had Greek or Cypriot students in your classes?
I had a few Greeks, a lot of Cypriots.
Really?
Back in the after the occupation of Cyprus,
Yes.
there was a wave of Cypriots that came to the United States, and I had quite a few. Yeah. They all wanted to be architects.
So they felt close to you because you are Greek.
Young kids come to a different country and they find a Greek teacher and they all want to speak to you in Greek, and I would say, this is America, we speak English, no questions except in English, for a very practical purpose.
Yes, they have to. It is a process of inclusion to the American society.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I always felt that the Greeks, I never wanted, as a Greek American, I never wanted to live in a ghetto. Perhaps that's one of the reasons why I never moved to Astoria, was that. I said, I refuse to live in a ghetto. And I don't mean ghetto in a negative.
Yes, I know. The ethnic, the needs.
circle.
Yeah.
I said, I want to be outside. I want to be Greek when I want to be Greek. And I want to be fully American when I want to be American. And that's exactly what I was. When I got my degree, I did not go to Astoria to open up a little shop to practice engineering and architecture. I went to Manhattan and I went to the biggest engineering office and I knocked on their door and I said, I want a job, and they gave me a job. And I never looked back.
I see.
I said, during the week, I am American, I work with American clients, and that's what I want to do.
Interesting,
And
very interesting.
the formula worked fine for me.
Yeah. This is interesting because it's a stereotype about Greeks that they are over concentrated to the food industry, diners, etc. But also through my research, I have realized that a pretty, large number of Greeks or Greek Americans who are in the engineering occupation.
Well, quite a few.
And
I met a lot of Greeks, through my practice, in architectural offices, in engineering offices, and they were darn good architects and engineers. They may not have had the opportunities I had because I always, you got to be a little lucky too. You got to be smart. You got to be quick on your feet, but you got to be lucky.
yeah.
So I had the opportunities to break through the barriers and.
Is there any project you liked more than other? I know that all your projects are like your babies, but do you have any?
Look, from the beginning, I sort of specialized in high-rise buildings. And I didn't specialize. It was just, it came to me. I said, okay, a project came, a second project came, and then after that, you sort of take the hang of it. So I did a lot of work in high-rise construction, high-rise design. Now, I never looked down upon other projects. I've done little things because I wanted to do them. For example, I did the restoration of the U.S. Capitol building.
This is an interesting situation. Let's talk about this. Can you tell us a few things about what you brought us today?
Well, what you're looking at here, just take this out of here. What you're looking at here is a mathematical model, a computer model of the U.S. Capitol dome.
Wow.
Right at the top there is the Statue of freedom. So when we were renovating this, I had a special permit, and I used to go up and down in the dome, up and down. And one day I had the opportunity, because they had a scaffold, to climb right up at the top and hug the freedom statue. And there was no one to take a picture of me. So I don't have a picture.
So it's like, from the mountains of Psiloritis to the highest point of the White House.
But again, this one here.
Yeah, this is interesting because inside the Capitol, the person who did a lot of the paintings,
yeah,
is the Greek-Italian Broumidis.
Yes.
So inside there is a Broumidis, and outside
it's interesting.
It is another Greek.
Because the president of our company, God rest his soul, Charlie Thornton, Dr. Thornton, walks into my office one morning and he says, Manoli, what do you know about restorations, historic restorations? Look at him. He knows that I work in high-rise buildings. He must be kidding me.
Yeah.
I said, Charlie, you're talking to a man who walked in history. I said, I'm Greek. I know all about restorations. Everything in Greece needs restoration. He laughs, I laugh. He knew I was bullshitting him. And he says, do you have time to come with me to Washington tomorrow? I said,
just like that, eh?
Even if I don't have the time, I'll make the time. So the next day we are on the shuttle to Washington, and we go to the Capitol building, and we meet with the architect of the Capitol, Alan Handman. And Charlie introduces me as the best Greek engineer.
Okay.
And of course, he already knew who we were.
Yeah, because you already had a lot of years of experience.
Of
right?
course. So he tells us, I need you guys to take a look at the Capitol Dome. It's got some problems. And I need some people that I can trust.
This is very critical for the Americans, right? Trusting.
So we chatted a little bit, and he says, and he says, this is a project that I will not even put out for bid. I will not solicit proposals. This I'm going to give you. Here, you take it. And he says, right after this, you go to the National Archives. He looks at me, and you ask them to give you all the drawings they have on the Capitol Dome. And that's what I did.
Very nice.
And a week later, they sent me a roll of drawings this big. Because they had to reproduce.
So you had a lot of homework
they
to do.
They give me the originals.
Yeah.
The originals were like artwork.
Oh my God.
And they sent me reproductions. Yeah. And that's where, then we analyzed it, and we reanalyzed it, and we came up with a report under my signature. It went to the Capitol architect, and now, being a smart Greek, you got to write not only a good report, but it's got to look nice. So I sent it out, and I used a leather cover with this image in the front. The next day I get a call from his office. His assistant calls me and she says, Mr. V, can you send us another 100 copies? I said, 100 copies? I said, each copy costs me $100 to make.
Why they ask her?
Well, what do you need 100 copies? Can you, don't you have a Xerox machine? He says, no, you don't understand. He says, this project is going to cost $50–60 million, and we need the Senate to vote for it. So we need to give one to each senator.
It was a beautiful package.
And they gave one copy of the report to each of the U.S. senators.
And how long it took you to complete the job?
A couple of years.
And that made you to work more there than other places, or with your office here? So.
Well, that opened the way to different things. I mean, that opened the way right after this became this Civil Engineer magazine, which was throughout the United States, put this picture on its cover. Everybody saw it.
Yeah.
Then the owners of the Empire State Building called the next day or a year later. Oh, we have a problem with the Empire State Building. Would you like to get involved? I didn't get involved because I was doing a job in Saudi Arabia, but I gave it to one of my colleagues. There was an issue with the Jefferson Memorial, and the Park Service calls and he says, "Get your ass to Washington right away. We have a problem." Yeah. And that's how you get a name. You go from place to place.
Although Americans, especially New York, they are not, let's say, fond of, or not. They don't look very, willing to do restorations, because America is associated with modernity.
Right.
Only recently there is an office about restorations, right? And keep some of the buildings.
It is true. New Yorkers.
The concept of progress, because I want to go further than that and talk about the philosophy of the materials that you use, which is about modernity, high rising and glass and steel instead of other materials. It's a lot of philosophy there, I think, right?
It is.
But let's talk about the restoration.
Restoration is a totally different animal, and I don't really want to call myself a restoration architect because I'm not. But I had a lot of restoration architects in my office. Yeah. I was a structural engineer, and I was worried about the structure.
I guess you spent some time outside of Knossos, and you know about restorations in Crete.
My home in Heraklion is near Knossos, so I get this.
Yeah, this is what I figured.
By osmosis.
Yes, yes.
But the restoration is a big deal here because you have historic structures, okay?
Yes.
I mean, I restored. I get a call one day to go for an interview for a restoration of the Central Synagogue in New York, 53rd and Park. And I go, and who sits on the board of the synagogue? One of my competitors, structural engineer, Erwin Cantor, the biggest, we were the biggest, he was the number 2 engineer in Novisin. But we were friends with Erwin. And I look at him and I say, "Erwin, what am I doing here?" I said, "What am I doing here?" He says, "I made sure I put your name in. It's up to you to win it." I said, "What about your office?" He says, "My office is not a restoration, it's a structural office." And we won it. And we went against other architects. Some of them were Jewish. And they hired the Greek Orthodox. And I kept telling them, "You hired the Greek Orthodox to do a Jewish synagogue, guys. Come on. Are you sure you know what you're doing?"
Well, you've been to many other countries, but also you travel a lot within the Americas, not only North America. And you've seen that most of the federal buildings or other buildings, they follow the classical Greek. So you felt close to that in the back of the mind, or at the core thinking of building American cities, the sociology of space is the Greek ideals, and you felt some kind of familiarity, pride behind that.
Definitely pride, but you know well that in America those Greek ideals have been sort of evaporated long ago. I mean, the founding fathers had those ideals and they designed Washington based on those ideals. But in New York, you see very little that resembles.
But structurally speaking, architecturally speaking, the Greek architecture, the classical Greek architecture, it's all over, right? So.
Oh yes.
So New York or America is not totally a foreign place for the Greeks. This is what I'm trying to say.
Oh yes.
Do you think that the environment, the structure of the cities play a role for Greeks or Greek Americans to feel close to the American values?
I do. I'm not sure how others feel, but I feel that the thinking, the American thinking of democracy and free expression resembles or approaches the Greek ideal. And I think Americans appreciate that. Some of my friends would always tell me, yeah, you guys think similar like we do, about liberty and democracy and architecture and everything else.
I remember a student of mine told me, because here I have created 20 plus years a study abroad course, and I had a student from New York going to Greece. And when I walked into Athens, I felt pretty similar walking to New York, because I see the Corinthian structure, or the Ionic structure, the columns, and I realized that this, that was a striking remark that the student made.
I wish we had more in New York. We have a few older buildings, but I wish we had more. But New York is a very tough place. It's a very tough real estate place.
Yeah, I mean, thrives on building, right?
You have the cutthroat developers in New York that they will not.
Yeah.
I mean, the mentality has changed a bit now. When I was practicing in New York, I mean, they were building square boxes. One of the reasons why I liked the practice abroad, I did a lot of practicing in China, in Saudi Arabia, in the Gulf, and in Turkey. They paid more attention to architecture there than here.
Yeah, of course.
Here was a very cutthroat square box.
The movement in Germany, Bauhaus, right? How you create a living, or the experiment in Brasilia. Alexiou was one of them. How to create a city that eliminates, which is sustainable and eliminate friction in comparison, let's say, to what we call the projects, which is designed in a way to create. You cannot avoid conflict.
To isolate and create little ghettos. Well, that's the hardcore American mentality of the 1940s and 50s and 60s. I think it's changed a bit now, although even today, I mean, if you look at the high-rise buildings today in New York, you see the evolution. The evolution of Manhattan, for example. The high-rise building was initiated because of the need for space. People want to congregate, people want to commerce, people want to come to Manhattan. And they need space, and therefore you go high.
But also it is the ideology. If it is a superpower, it needs to show the power.
Correct.
It is the American, I don't want to use the term imperialism, but if you want to be a world leader, you need to show the dynamics. I mean,
isn't that part of every country and every, I always felt a little unease in my practice because the motive of the clients was always to show off their power.
Okay.
And I felt a little sort of unease. I practiced it, but I said, why in the world do you need a 130-story building in the middle of the desert in Saudi Arabia? Other than to show the world that you are the mighty Saudi Arabia and you have the money and the others don't. I'll give you a story. In 1999, I was called by the government of Turkey to go to Istanbul after the earthquake and check one of the buildings, the airport buildings, because it was a brand new building and it almost collapsed from an earthquake that was 100 kilometers away. So I went there and I spent almost a month trying to figure out what the hell was going on and then another year to fix it. In that period, I get a call from my office in New York. They said, can you go to to Dubai? I said, in fact, at the time I was in Crete on vacation, and I said, Dubai is really about 6 hours away from me. Because you gotta go to Athens, and then to Dubai, And I said, and Dubai from New York is only another couple of hours. So why don't you send somebody else? I'm on vacation. No, you're going to go to Dubai because you know how to speak their language. I mean, not Arabic.
Yes, I understand.
They understand what they think. So I go there and I meet the emirs. Now, Dubai was a different place then. Dubai had very few high-rise buildings. Maybe half a dozen. I go there, I meet the emir's nephew.
Okay.
They welcome me, and said, let me go and show you where we want to build this building. Still didn't know what building. It takes me to a site outside downtown Dubai to where the Palm Island is today. The Palm Island did not exist then. They were constructing it. In fact, there was a Greek contractor that was doing the island. Takes me out to the island, which was nothing but a bunch of dirt in the middle of the ocean. And the Greek boats were bringing sand and they were dumping it and they were making an island. So he tells me, can you put up a high-rise building here? I said, of course. He says, you can build a building on top of sand? I said, if you spend enough money, I can do anything. He says, I want you to build me a building, to design me a building that's 450 meters. I said, is there any particular reason why this height is 450 meters? He says, yeah, it's going to be the world's tallest building. I said, I have news for you. I'm just finishing a building in Taipei, and it's 540 meters when it finishes. He was shook up. He says, then I want mine to be 600. I said, and I know for a fact that there is a building in the works in China that's going to be 650. He says, I want mine 750. We ended up with 850. In an hour, it grew from...
The competition to be higher.
I realized that it was comical.
Okay. Vanity.
It was comical. So that building was never built there. It was built not by me, by somebody else. That's the tallest building, that was the tallest building of the world for a while, and until somebody built a bigger one in China. Okay? The Burj Khalifa.
So there is no end to this.
There's no end to this. I'm doing a building now in Saudi Arabia. When I designed it 15 years ago, and it went through tribulations. My client is still in jail because when the new king came, he jailed everybody.
Political issues.
Political issues.
Yeah, okay.
The building was sold. The site was sold. I started the building and it went up to the 60th floor and then it stopped. Recently it started again. When it finishes, it will be 1,001 meters. 160 stories. And it's going to be the tallest for a while.
Yeah.
And then somebody in Manhattan
Yeah.
will build a taller one.
Let's come back to Manhattan. So, do you agree that to a very large extent, the Manhattan skyline, it was created by Greeks or Greek American architectures or engineers?
Not
I
exactly.
have in mind Kandili, for example.
Kostas Kondylis, a good friend.
Yes.
God rest his soul. Kondylis did a lot of work for Donald Trump. Donald Trump did some buildings. He didn't do a lot, but he did some buildings. I wouldn't say that. I mean, Manhattan has a lot of buildings and a lot of very talented architects from around the world. I mean, Manhattan was such a magnet until the Middle East started developing, until China started developing.
Yes.
But still, Manhattan is where the architecture of the world takes place. And Chicago, the two cities.
But How do you explain the high prices of buying or renting in Manhattan?
I can't.
You can.
I don't.
Yeah.
It's Manhattan.
Is part of what you do, or various offices in your occupation that they support, they promote, they try for affordable housing, because this is one of the most difficult issues in New York, and not only.
I don't think they try. I don't think New York tries hard enough for affordable housing, especially Manhattan. The politicians may have a lot to say about it, but they do very little. Manhattan is such a competitive place, Nico. It's not easy to get anybody to give up land.
But we can build to other areas, right? Affordable housing.
In other bureaus, you can build in New Jersey. You can build.
But we don't do it.
It
is for lack of political will or vision, money.
I think it's political vision, lack of political vision and will, that you could codify the need.
Yeah, as an expert on that, that's why I'm asking you.
Unless the need is law, the developer will not do it. You know the cutthroat developer in New York. They will not do it. It's got to be mandatory. If you provide 20% of the space for low income, if you do this, they'll do it. They'll do it, and they will not do it unless you give them an incentive to do something more. And usually the incentive is, I'll give you more height, but you got to give me 20 apartments. Or I had a building in Manhattan that on 7th Avenue that was built about 1.5 feet too high than the drawings. And that was a construction problem. It was, when you build a 700-foot building, 1.5 feet is not that much. So the building department got wind of it. So we had a dome on top of the building. They made us take down the dome because it had to be below the approved height. And after we took it down, the landlord made a deal that he gave some space to the artists of the community, and they allowed him to rebuild the dome. So it's all a deal. It's all.
Now we're talking about sustainability. This is one of the words that, buzzwords. Do we have sustainable buildings? Do we move to green development?
We do. The buildings that we build today are a lot more sustainable than what we used to do back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. We build buildings today that are considered what materials we use.
Yeah, I'm going to go there, to the philosophy of materials.
How you situate the building to face the environment, what exterior walls you use, what systems you use, how you generate and how you recycle things within the building. And all of that has contributed to what they call LEED buildings, green buildings.
Yes.
Buildings that recycle the water, buildings that generate electricity.
This is a big issue.
Big issue.
Oil or electricity, how you deal with that.
That's right. Buildings that are so well insulated that they need very little to heat them in the winter, and very little to cool them down in the summer. And all of this is because of the need for a better environment. And again, that's because somebody codified that in the law that says, if you build a building that satisfies these criteria, we'll give you a tax break. So there's an incentive there.
Okay.
And also people. I mean, I would rather do work in a building that's green and healthy than in an old clunker that pumps in dirty air through the system.
I see. So, what do you recommend, or what do you advise, what do you suggest to a young person who comes to study in CUNY or other schools, your occupation?
You know, I did a lot of mentoring through the years, both at school and after I left school. I was a mentor at the civil engineering department. My advice to the young people is
not only male, but also female, because a lot of females now enter the field, right? You have both men and women.
Oh,
now,
yes, yes.
which is very
Young
interesting. It used to be closer.
Look, when I graduated, we had, I think, 2 women in the whole department, and now I think it's 50-50 or more women than
Which
than
is
men,
some progress.
which
Yes,
is good.
yes.
What I advise the young people always was and is, you've got to be the best. Good enough is not good enough. You've got to be the best. You've got to strive to be the best. And you got to be focused. You know what I used to do to my engineers? I used to meet with them once a year, at least. At least. With all of them. And I used to force them to do what I used to call 5-year plans. I said, you're going to do a 5-year plan for yourself. You're going to plan what you want to be in 5 years and how you're going to go about achieving that. Now you're an engineer. In 5 years, you're going to be a project manager, or you're going to be a vice president. Think about how you're going to do that, what you have to achieve, how hard you have to work, how much money you want to make, and show it to me. So that you have a roadmap. You can't just go to work and hope that somebody will realize that you're doing a good job. Yes, we will realize it. But you have to be your biggest proponent of yourself.
I had a conversation with some architects, and they told me how the field changed dramatically with the entrance of high technology, of artificial intelligence, finding the new architects who don't use the pencil. They never use a pencil. They don't know how to draw because now
It's all computerized.
the computerized system or the AI is doing all
It's
this.
all computerized.
How you
You know, they don't produce drawings anymore. We used to produce drawings when I practiced. The final set of the product was a set of drawings.
how do you see all these big changes?
I love it. I love it. I love it. And if you don't subscribe to those changes, you will die. You will not be able to practice. Look, the reason why I got involved in high-rise buildings, it was very simple. I'll tell you why. It was an opportunity which I sort of grabbed. Our office at the time was a very small office. We were about 50 people. We got a 50-story building at the south tip of Manhattan, the Continental Tower. And we looked at each other and we did not know how to design the building. I mean, we had designed 20 stories, 25 stories, but 50-story, never. So then I said, you know what? We have to do something about this. So I went back to school. I went and I took some graduate classes at night on how to optimize a tall building. And people thought that I was crazy. And based on that research, we developed programs that we used, and I think they still use today in the office. They don't look what I first came up with. They are very sophisticated AI programs now. But when I started, I put in that building in the computer, and I knew how much work each beam and each column was doing up down the building, which was important because it allowed me to optimize the structure. And that's why I got involved and I got hooked into this field. And all because there was an old professor at CCNY that had thought about that, and it sort of never had the opportunity to do anything about it. And when I went to him and I said, Professor Bernstein, I want to do this. Can you sit with me? Can you do it? And he jumped into the opportunity and he said, yeah. And I took 2 tutorial classes. Okay? Tutorial means you and the teacher.
Yes.
And that's how we came up with this idea. You got to push the envelope. If you don't push the envelope, you're going to be part of the bulk mail, and that's not going to take you very far. Yeah.
Very interesting. And then, where Kazantzakis fits into all this? You serve as the president of the international
Nico,
committee of Friends of Kazantzakis, Nikos Kazantzakis.
I do.
We've done many events. Yeah.
Yorgos Stassinakis is a very good friend.
He came here to the premises.
Yorgos Stassinakis calls me one day and he says, I need you to take over the Kazantzakis chapter in New York. I said, Yorgo, please. Me? I have enough in my plate. He says, no. He says, I know that if you want somebody to do something, you got to go to the busiest person. And that's how I got hooked. And
nobody can say no to
listen, Kazantzakis, it was in my heart. When I was a kid, my house, I rented a room in Iraklio as a student, was right below Martinengo, on the back side.
I see.
That was the poor side of Iraklio, on the outside of the walls. And every time I would walk through the giant doors to enter the city proper, I was thinking of the man who was sleeping upstairs. So it affected me, obviously. I knew, and I read to whatever extent I could at the time. Everybody read Kapeta Michali. I mean, who was a Cretan boy that does not read Kapeta Michali?
Ελευθερία ή θάνατος.
Ελευθερία ή θάνατος. And it makes you feel so proud and so big and so powerful that you cannot describe it. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't difficult for me to say, yes, I will do it. Have we done a good job? I think we've done a good job, Nico. You are involved in that too.
Of course.
We've done quite a few things together, right? We've done glosses and...
we had the conferences also here at Queen's College a couple of times, and also through your influence we managed to go inside the United Nations, and that was a big moment for
so we went to the United Nations, right? I mean, where else can you honor Kazantzakis? A world-wide figure, okay? The most translated person other than in the United Nations. So I remember, in fact, you opened the door to the general consul because I did not know him at the time.
Yes, yes.
I had moved out of New York. So I went to him and I said, I gave him the idea. I said, you know, I would really like to have an event at the United Nations. That's a great idea. And that's how we got connected with. And it was a simple exhibition, but the fact that it was there. Okay?
Yes, very important.
Very important. And now I hear that we're having another friend who's going to be the next ambassador to the United Nations.
Yes.
And get ready, we can have another event.
Oh, it sounds promising.
This time we're going to have an event at a bigger
room and higher.
When I was president of the Pankritan, I had done another event for the Cretan Kritiki Diatrophy.
Very important.
In the United Nations.
I think this is some of the donations. First of all, you brought us this, which is a little thing that contains about almost 600 records, LPs, right? Or 78?
578 76, 78.
Almost 600, yes. Records.
Of records, of historic records. The originals have been donated to the Vikelea library in Iraklio, and this is a copy of them, which I managed to get my hands on. And they're historic because many of them were done outside, were done back in the early 1900s. Constantinople, I think even the United States.
Yes, some of them are.
Some of them. And they're one of a kind, and it's sort of a progression of the Greek music. I mean, you could track the Greek music, and the Greek and the music from Asia Minor and the Δημοτική μουσική.
That'll be a great resource for the archives here, because we have little about music, and we hope, and today our film director is Mr. Yannis Koutalis, who can create to HAP's website a special place for the music, so soon people can have access to all these treasures. You gave us more music in the past because you've done a great job to collect music around.
Even though I don't play music, I don't play an instrument.
The Μήλια μου Κρήτη από τα παλιά.
I love music. I'm a Byzantine chanter. But I like popular music. I like Δημοτική μουσική. And liking is not enough. I mean, you got to do something about it. So the books that you're holding there, I have a group in Iraklio. They're all retired, like me, that have a desire to propagate culture, and they're researchers. So what they did, a few of them, they went from village to village. You take a book like this. There's a village in Iraklio called Stamni, and they have 2 violin players. They had that they were never published. They never produced records, but they were the people that entertained the whole area there. And we went there, my colleagues, and they recorded their music, and they took their history. So we published a book that has the music in CDs and the history of the musicians.
That's fantastic.
Now this is the 11th book. We have 15 until now.
We have 10 and 11.
10 and 11. I'll get you the rest of the books I have in Greece.
Okay. You'll bring it to us at some point, or I come and get them from Crete.
And these are books that we don't sell.
And also you have the CDs, right?
Yes.
We're going to digitize them and also add them.
Yeah. We don't sell these books. We're not there for the money.
But that was your own money, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a donation from me. We give them to the libraries. We give them to music schools. We give them to modern players of music. I mean, can you imagine a young kid who is learning to play violin or lira or lauto to listen to a recording from 1905?
Yeah.
Original.
Yeah, this is
with not all the extra baggage that it's collected through the years.
Yeah, it's a treasure.
Right.
It's a treasure.
So that's the idea, really. That's the idea.
The other book you donated is both in Greek and in English. Great Philhellene, right? George Horton.
Well, George Horton, everybody should know. He was a general consul in Constantinople.
In Asia Minor,
Asia Minor.
During the catastrophe.
During the catastrophe, he wrote about the catastrophe. He documented a lot of things about the catastrophe.
Yeah.
But he was also a novelist.
Yes.
So he wrote in English, Like Another Helen. It's a beautiful novel.
Yes.
And what my contribution was the translation.
Excellent.
So we have a non-profit organization. It's called Cultural Crete.
Oh, interesting.
And Cultural Crete undertook the translation. So we paid for the translation, and this is now in Greek.
Now it will be in our libraries for people who want to come here and study it. What about this book?
Well, that book.
in the making.
That's a book in the making. This is a book that I wrote, and it's, you see it this way because it's loose. They sent it to me, so this was the final copy that I read before the publication.
Okay, excellent.
The publication already happened. It's already in Greece. I haven't gotten it yet, but.
So this is in Greek, but also you're going to produce
is in Greek, the first one.
A publication in English.
It's going to come out in English.
Yeah, and it is basically.
It's about me, but more. It's not a biography. It's snippets of my life, both personal life, the civic involvement, as well as the professional involvement. So you're going to get snippets about events that I organized.
Excellent.
You're going to get snippets about buildings that I did, and you're going to get Koutsobolio.
That's also very interesting.
About things that happened.
Very, very interesting.
And you're going to, and by the way, then I have some stories about my family. I mean, that oral stories that my grandfather told me.
Oh, this is amazing.
My grandfather was a priest's kid.
Oh, wow.
Okay? Now, this is now in the 1800s, when the Turks were the occupiers of Crete. So he was a priest in a mountain village. That priest was not only a priest, he was a farmer.
Yeah.
So he used to go farming every day. So you know what he did on Saturday that he had to come home early to go and do the Vespers? He used to mount on his horse, put my grandfather in the back of the horse. He used to put his petrachili on, and he used to start the Esperino on the horse. And by the time he got to the village, he was almost done. So he would go into the church to finish.
Look at this.
And that's chronicled in there.
Very interesting titles. Choose a text. I would like to hear your voice and the language, the beautiful language, the Greek language that you speak, to document it into our archives and close our interview with that.
Γράφω στον πρόλογο.
The prologue.
Φίλες και φίλοι αναγνώστες, ίσως πολλοί από εσάς να περιμένετε να διαβάσετε στο βιβλίο μου αυτό περί υψηλών τυρίων και τεχνικών επιτευγμάτων της καριέρας μου. Το θεώρησα καλό όμως αντί να εκθέσω τα σχετικά για την παγκόσμια αγορά των ουρανοξυστών και τη ματαιοδοξία, θα έλεγα, των ιδιοκτητών τους. Ήταν περί της μηχανικής των υψηλών τυρίων, της ανθεκτικότητας των ουρανοξυστών κλπ. Όπως πολλοί θα περιμένατε. Θεώρησα καλό να ασχοληθώ με πιο σπουδαία και ανθρώπινα θέματα. Προσωπικά θα έλεγα σε ένα βαθμό και πολλά άλλα που έχουν σημαδέψει τη ζωή μου σε μικρό ή μεγάλο βαθμό. Από την παιδική μου ηλικία, την εφηβεία μου, μέχρι τη μεγάλη ηλικία μου. Η δική μου πορεία, όπως πολλών άλλων συναδέλφων στην Αμερική, κατ' επέκταση σε όλο τον κόσμο, είναι πορεία του κάθε ανθρώπου που αναζήτησε καλύτερη τύχη ή μάλλον ευκαιρία στο εξωτερικό. Το έχω πει πολλές φορές πως μπορεί συγκεκριμένα στην Αμερική τη δεκαετία του 70 και του 80, τα χρόνια που σπούδασα και ξεκίνησα τα πρώτα μου επαγγελματικά βήματα, να απολάμβανε κανείς μεγαλύτερη αξιοκρατία και διαφάνεια. Ωστόσο, ο αγώνας ήταν άνισος, η προσπάθεια και οι θυσίες μεγαλύτερες. Οι όροι της επαγγελματικής επιτυχίας στην εποχή που η χώρα θεωρείται γη της επαγγελίας παρουσίαζε μεν αρκετές ευκαιρίες, αλλά πάντα με συγκεκριμένες προϋποθέσεις. Σκληρή εργασία, έγνοια, ειλικρίνεια, διαφάνεια και αριστεία. Και συνεχίζει.
Πολύ ενδιαφέρον. Θα περιμένουμε οπωσδήποτε υπογεγραμμένο βιβλίο εδώ για τη βιβλιοθήκη και να συνδυάζεται μαζί με την πάρα πολύ ωραία συνέντευξη που κάναμε. Thank you very much for your consent to accept give an interview here at the Hellenic American Project, and we appreciate being so kind to us, and be patient and tell us whatever you thought it was part of your presence in America, in Greece, in the various organizations. I think you are one of the very few people in the community that have the respect and the love of so many other people in so many different other countries. Last time we had a person from South America, and she also expressed, her thanks. You visited Greek communities in other countries, and that shows your unique position to be, as you said there, as you said in this region, the human condition, the human factor. The buildings, the engineering is fine, but the human interaction, how important it is to you. And
well, of course it is, and I always paid attention and placed much value to that interaction, and especially interaction with Greeks abroad. So I visited the Germans, I visited the Australians, I visited the South Americans in Argentina. And many other places. And wherever I went, I always sought to find the Greeks. I'll never forget, I was in Taipei because I did a building in Taipei. The tallest building of the world was in Taipei, Taipei 101 at the time. So I was going there every month. So the first time I went there, we went out to eat late at night with the team, the architects and everybody. And as we were walking about 11:30 at night, the main strip of Taipei, I see a taverna on a sign there, a store sign. So I say, well, we got to stop. So we go inside, and it was closed. The taverna was closed because it was late. But it was open there. There was a couple of Chinese guys cleaning. So I said, where's the boss? So one of my colleagues that spoke Chinese explained. He says, home. I said, call him. Calls a guy. He's a guy from Peloponneso on the phone. He says, he heard my Greek. He says, δεν το πιστεύω, I cannot believe this. There's a Greek in Taipei. He says, stay where you are, I'm coming over.
Unbelievable.
So he came in at midnight to meet me.
That's a great story.
Okay? So he says, the next time you're here, you're coming to my taverna, because I was going home the next day. He said, you're coming to my taverna. So we used to go and eat afterwards every month.
Great story.
Greeks everywhere, and famous Greeks, they're simple Greeks, but they're all valuable to me. They're all just the same. They're hard-working people. And they all have desire, this desire and fire in their heart.
So are you optimistic about the future of the Greek American community that goes through this demographic transformation on one hand, and on the other hand, how, if we have the ability to adjust to the new needs and interests of the and the challenges of the new generations?
Look, it's a challenge. I'm optimistic because by nature I'm optimistic. But that doesn't mean that we have to sit back and say, no, it's going to happen. It may not. So we have to work hard. We have to educate our people. And I don't mean to, I mean to teach them the basic traits of Hellenism. I used to be the leader of the Greek school in Rhine, New York. Why? Because I had my two sons there. So if I didn't do it, who would have done it? So I used to do, I was not a teacher, I used to be in charge. Find teachers, pay the teachers, get students,
Structural engineering again.
And I made sure that they did not only learn the alphabet, but we had a dance teacher, and we had a history teacher, with a cultural teacher. Because to me it was just as important. We have to teach that. We have to get through to the next generation. I would hate to see Greek Americans know only the souvlaki and the moussaka and the Kyrieleison. Because I heard somebody described in that way. Says, well, you know, the Greek America today, we have the church, and we have the hall, and we have the moussaka and the Kyrieleison. I said, if that's the only what we have, that's not enough for me. We got to be a little deeper than that. We got to something much deeper than that, and that's Hellenism. No, I don't think that the language is very difficult, and at least the oral part of it has to be transmitted. Our schools are not equipped to teach the Greek language the way we were taught. And I don't expect my kids to read or write in the same manner that I do. But they speak the language, at least. They can read a few kolivogramata.
Yeah.
Can they do better? Of course they can.
Yeah.
But
the hardcore values and
the hardcore values, if they keep those Hellenistic values,
which is equality, democracy,
from the democracy, and the religion plays a great deal in this. I mean, you know, here in this country, religion and Hellenism are intertwined, and it's a good thing for me. I mean, I would say it's a good thing because...
And Kazantzakis can help also.
Kazantzakis, you know what? Kazantzakis was a religious man. Maybe not the same religious as you and I, but he was a religious man. He was at a much higher level, a very religious man. And I'll never forget the famous anathema of the Church of Greece, which was a misplaced...
Yeah, he was totally misunderstood.
Misunderstood. And finally, this decision of the Holy Synod of Greece went to the Patriarchate. And the Patriarch, God rest his soul, Athinagoras, who was a great mind and a great man, looks at it and he says, I wish those guys that produced this had a tenth of the faith of this man here. And he opens up his drawer and he puts it inside, and they found it underneath his papers when he died.
Interesting.
Okay? So people that understood Kazantzakis never had a problem with him. And I think that we overcame that fear and that animosity.
So to keep you know, close to the values, you say, for the next generations of Hellenism, which are universal values, right?
Universal values, and that's why I think it's important that in our communities that every community has to have a school. Let it be an afternoon school, let it be a Sunday, a Saturday school. But unless you teach your kids how to dance, unless you teach your kids some key elements of Hellenism, and of course take them to Greece, because that's the biggest university of
and
Hellenism.
Also the food, right, which is one of the most basic things.
The Greek food, the Cretan food, the Mediterranean diet.
Yeah, all those markers can help maintain the identity.
And I always, and I tell my kids, I said, you know, because you're a Greek American, it makes you a better American than your average sort of middle of the road. I said, America, as one of our mayors used to say, is nothing but a mosaic. And we need to be the brightest stones of that mosaic. Different, blue, red, whatever. But we have to be separate, on top of everybody. And if we manage that, we'll survive.
Yeah. Well, I think the Spartans, right? The famous dance and saying "Ames de gesometa polokaroles," that the next generation should be better than the previous. So it is part of the idea of not only maintaining what we have, but leave the world as a better place with better people, better sustainability.
And listen, I'm very proud of our young generation, of our second and third generation, because we have third generation Greeks now.
In some cases,
maybe
fourth.
fourth.
Yes, of course.
Right? I mean, there are Cretans in the West, Colorado, Utah, California. They're fourth generation. And by the way, they speak an archaic Cretan language, for obvious reasons.
Yes.
Generally, though, our young generation, the younger generation, they're more educated than the older generation.
Yes.
They have managed to enter the society in a good way. They are not, they didn't disappear. A lot of them did, but most of them didn't. And they are proud of their heritage. And to me, that's the best we can expect. I don't think that we can expect tsoliades out of our young people, although they do get dressed as tsoliades
For
on
the
March
parade,
25th. But we live in a different country, and you have to live with the norms of the country that you're in.
To adapt.
Right.
Excellent. That's a great message. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nico.